first of all, it is day number 8 of the session. How's it been going so far?
Yeah, so we're on, week two of session. It has been coming at us fast and furious. There's a lot of excitement going on here in the Capitol, right? There's a lot of change. We heard from former Governor Inslee in his last address, which was really a stark contrast what he was talking about versus what the new governor, Governor Ferguson, mentioned. And the difference was really, I don't know, I'm hopeful that Governor Ferguson understands, realizes, and sees a lot of the problems we're facing in Washington, is ready to correct them. And if that's the case, he's talked a lot about some really good Republican ideas that we've been offering for several years now that he wants to get done. And so I'm looking forward to hopefully having kind of a new tone and tenure out of the governor's office about working with Republicans and Democrats here in Olympia.
That actually flows really well into my next question. During the election, you kept bringing up that you always look for common ground. How have you done that so far?
Well, so in my personal role with other legislators, I am working with Democrats on a number of bills around ways to help Washingtonians. We've got some interesting bills coming down the line about how we can help with genetic disease testing for children in our state. Oftentimes, it's pretty complex and cumbersome, and so we're trying to streamline that to make it easier for those that need that specialized testing. I'm helping out with bills to help with, payroll access, wage access. There's other things that we can do to get out of the way to make it easier for people to use technology that we have in our country to make sure that they can make their ends meet. Um, as far as the governor goes, I think I've said very publicly, and I wanted him, and we're meeting with him to know that if he is sincere about his goals, if he wants to make sure we hire, recruit, and retain more police officers, both on the state and local level, we're here to help. If he wants to right size our state's budget so that we're not over aggressively spending and that we're living within our means without putting more burden on Washington taxpayers, we're here to help. He talked a lot about getting housing regulations and other state agency regulations out of the way so we can get more homes built and we can get people working with their government, not working against their government. And if he's sincere in all those, we're here to help. Of course, there's going to be areas where we disagree, and that's part of the political process and the political nature. But we have made it very clear that even though he is, a Democrat governor, if the ideas are good, the Republicans here in Olympia are going to be there to help to get them done. And I'm excited to put his promises to the test, and let's see if we can get those things done for a better Washington.
Now, on the flip side of that, is there any areas where you feel like you've been working hard to find common ground and you'd like to see a little bit more effort from your Democratic counterparts?
Well, I think there was some hesitancy from our Democrat counterparts on some of the budget stuff, right? He talked about reducing spending and trimming programs, and that was something that was, I wouldn't necessarily call it an insult to some of the Democrats, but it definitely was a departure from how we have done things, at least in the last 6 years when I've been here. We have had record year over year spending increases, sometimes, just due to the growth of the economy and sometimes due to, getting some one-time dollars that they're able to spend, but now has it put us in this position where we have these ongoing obligations. So that may cause a little bit of consternation around here, but I'm hopeful that we can work through any of those differences.
I saw as I was looking through a couple of your bills, and I could just be reading the website wrong, but I saw that you're not the original or primary sponsor on any of them. Are you planning on being the first to sponsor or write any bills in the near future?
So I made a commitment to my caucus. I was recently elected as the deputy leader of the House Republicans, which means I'm number two in charge over here for our caucus. I made a promise to them that I wasn't going to prime sponsor any bills. And I said that, I made that promise because I wanted to support our caucus efforts and I wanted to support individual members' bill requests and efforts. And as deputy leader, there is a lot that is involved with your day to day, and there's a lot that goes on with strategy and how we, achieve our goals, how we make things better for Washington, and how we help our members reach their goals with their bills and priorities. And I thought the best way to do that was to not have my own, priorities that I'm trying to get done at the expense of someone else. So I'm here obviously representing my district. I'm involved in a lot of things and making sure that we're doing good things there. And there has been good ideas that have come across my desk, and I've made sure they've gotten into the hands of people that can get them over the line. Like, for example, I've worked with ag forestry students on a bill that they've been working on the last 6 months. I've got them a prime sponsor that understands the issue, is going to be able to shepherd that bill through the process. I think I'm number 2 or 3 on that bill, and we're going to get that done. So the big thing for me is I don't need the credit. I don't need my name. I don't need my name at the top of the bill. I don't need the governor's, pen when he signs it. I would rather have good policy and not be known for getting it done than, having my name in a flashy press release.
Or when I was looking at the bills that you were secondary sponsoring, I saw that there's a couple for law enforcement, specifically hiring and retention. I was just wondering if you could tell me a little bit about what you're hoping to do as with sponsoring those, and what you're
Yeah.
hoping to do in this legislative session about that.
Well, so that was one of the key things that we as House Republicans have been pushing for several years now is we need to get more law enforcement officers out there. We need to restore sanity on our streets so that people feel safe in their homes and neighborhoods, and we can, tackle this crime. And so this was one of our priorities, and happened to be one of the governor's priorities. And so, by putting my name on it, I say I want to support this. I want to get this done for not only my district, but for the entire state. Um, so that's why I sponsored that one. I mean, it's logical, it makes sense. We are currently 50th out of 50 states in terms of law enforcement officers per capita, and it shows. We are unfortunately leading in some areas that we don't want to be leading in when it comes to increased violent crime in our state. And I think people that I've talked to, and just common sense would tell you, people want their communities safe, and they deserve that. And we should not be, leading the nation in crime statistics just because we're not properly funding and putting police on the ground. So hopefully with this new administration and, the support of us here in the House Republican Caucus, we're going to get that done.
A couple of days ago, and I'm not sure how much you had to do with this, but one of your fellow representatives, Mendoza, she gave the Republican perspective for this year's legislative session, and she mentioned a bunch of different problems and ideas that Republicans have. And I was just wondering, what do you think is the most realistic of those to have forward momentum on by the end of the session?
Well, I think in addition to the police officer in the public safety stuff, which obviously we've talked about at length, I think the other big one is on housing. There is a number of things we can do to get out of the way. There are proposals out there right now that would basically continue to restrict housing, and we do that in a number of ways, and it's really frustrating. One of the areas that we do this in is with regulations, and with the energy code and other things we're requiring for builders to put on new houses, it prices people out of the market. We make it incredibly difficult to build new housing. We make it incredibly expensive. Those are things we can start chipping away at now, both on kind of an agency side as well as on a legislative side. I think that's one area where we need to get going. Another area is not adding more burdens. There's been a big discussion this year about rent control. And it sounds good on paper, right? Well, we're going to limit the amount your rent increases could go up, but it actually creates it's a domino effect that actually will lead to less housing in the marketplace and lead to higher rents overall. And so we're saying, instead of trying to focus on controlling the market and figuring out a way to, micromanage people's rents, get out of the way and create a building boom, and competition will drive those prices down for everyone. And you don't have to take my word for it. It's not theoretical. You can see it in other states and other cities. If you look at Austin, Texas, they went from having pretty significant rents to basically opening up for building and construction. And rents, housing costs have actually come down because there's competition in the market and there's more people, more housing providers, and that helps lower prices overall. We've got a lot of serious problems around how we zone and build for housing that makes it incredibly hard to build, incredibly difficult to build, and oftentimes limits projects.
Uh, well, that was actually, um, let me rephrase that question. I don't know if I said that very clearly. What do you think is most likely to be to move forward in this legislative session over the next?
Okay, that's fair. I think,
Sorry about that.
no, you asked that right. Got excited and started wandering. I would say the law enforcement is probably the one that we can get done. I think that that is the easiest switch, right? It's some funding request. It's just get the money out the door to those that are hiring and recruiting. That's one. I think the second one would be continuing to refine and adjust our housing policies this session. We've kind of tweaked them year over year. I think this will be another year where both Republicans and Democrats agree that we need to um, do more to help spur development, and I think that'll get done this year.
And then, as you're walking around the Capitol and discussing, what seems to be the biggest, I guess, the biggest issue on people's minds these days on the Capitol building?
Oh, well, I don't want to bore you with stuff we've already talked about, but that has been on a lot of people's mind. I think the biggest area of concern is the assumed budget deficit and the response to that. So I think the biggest fear that people are having around here is around the budget deficit. And it is a assumed budget deficit, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that we have pushed off a lot of spending on new programs into out years. So we have a 4-year balanced budget that we have to do. But what we'll do is, in order to pass legislation now, they'll just delay the spending implementation. So it won't all come into effect. So that way, basically, it's like saying, we're going to let another legislature deal with that. We won't deal with that now. We'll get our policy win and we'll figure out how to fund it later. Well, a lot of those bills are coming due on top of just record spending without any adjustments in our agencies. So there's this big fear around what are we going to do to pay for this? And the response so far from the majority has been, well, we're going to propose a series of new taxes to meet this spending demand. And that's a wrong approach. It's really frustrating because it's not like our revenues have gone down. As a matter of fact, our state continues to grow revenue wise. We're still very blessed. We're just spending too much money. This problem is entirely self-inflicted. And so the tax piece is worrisome because they are proposing some taxes that will have a real long-term harmful impact on our state. And those include a wealth tax. They think that they can go out and just tax the global wealth of any individual in the state over a certain amount. Apart from its, I think, constitutional concerns, the impact of actually doing that is terrible, and you're going to move people out of our state that would otherwise stay here. There's also a jobs tax, and we have they want to tax jobs across Washington state because they think it's a way around an income tax. And what's frustrating about this is we know that governments will often use tax policy to incentivize or disincentivize things, right? For example, the carbon tax, the Climate Commitment Act tax, that was designed for people to reduce carbon, to reduce their output of carbon. So if you're going to tax something you want to get less of, you're going to tax jobs, you're going to get less jobs. And again, it's one of these, don't take my word for it. Go look at Seattle. Seattle started their jumpstart payroll tax. It was a head tax, similar to what they're looking to propose here on the statewide level. And Amazon alone moved 25,000 jobs out of the city of Seattle over to Bellevue. Now, if they can jump city to city, it sure stands to reason that they can jump state to state. And as a matter of fact, there are states chomping at the bit to get these jobs. And you've seen it in Virginia, They pay Amazon to move employees there. Austin, Texas, other areas are all looking for these jobs. And so if we create enough disincentives, these companies will move. So we have to think really carefully because our current budget, our current revenues are really because of the economic drivers in our economy. And it's a lot of our small businesses. There's also some marquee big businesses, Amazon, Boeing, and the like. And if you push and push and push, they're going to leave because we are just making it too expensive to do business in the state. So that is probably the biggest fear that I hear from a lot of people is that people are going to take the easy route of just taxing rather than the tougher route, which is right sizing their fiscal budget.
Okay, and then is there anything else that we missed that you would like to speak about?
I hope people in the Yakima Valley and around the 15th district will get involved, whether it's, obviously paying attention to what's going on over here, testifying on bills. We can testify remotely now, so you can actually sign in to testify on stuff that impacts you without having to drive to Olympia. Now, I tell you, come to Olympia, come hang out, come say hi. I'd love to see you if you're in town. But if you can't make it in person, try to sign up to testify on these bills. Lawmakers need to hear how the decisions they are making impact you, because oftentimes we can get in our little bubbles. We cannot understand what goes on outside our world. It's especially true of some of my good colleagues here in the Puget Sound area who think that they know how to better manage Eastern Washington than those of us living in Eastern Washington do. And that obviously is frustrating. But I'll tell you what, when I see a farmer, a rancher, a producer from my neck of the woods telling, Seattle chairs what they're trying to do will hurt the working folks in my district. That really gives me encouragement, and I think it has a big impact here.